When news spread that Pastor Mark was going to get married soon, everyone was overjoyed. They were glad to know that he had found love. But the tone quickly changed when they found out who the bride was and how young she was. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. The pastor was almost twice her age. Why would a respected pastor do such a thing? This was something everyone was desperate to find out, and the truth turned out to be so dark that it shocked the entire community. Pastor Mark had been serving a small and tight-knit community in Oakwood for almost a decade now. He was beloved and well-respected by his congregation and the community. People saw him as someone with a compassionate heart and unwavering faith. But things changed when people found out he was about to marry a young girl once she turned 18. The news spread quickly like wildfire. Everyone could not believe that their pastor could do such a thing, and everyone was curious to know who this mysterious girl was. Pastor Mark is a very reserved man, and he barely discusses his personal life, which only makes the future young bride more mysterious. All they knew was the bride's first name, Dolores, but nobody could recall anyone named Dolores joining their church. Eventually, the rumors reached Pastor Mark's daughter, Clara. She did not even have a clue about this so-called marriage, and based on what people have been saying, this Dolores is even younger than her. She could not believe people were saying such things. Of course, her father was free to remarry. He and her mother had been divorced for 5 years now. But why marry someone younger than his daughter? Clara confronted her father about it, but Pastor Mark neither confirmed nor denied the rumors. Frustrated that she was not getting any answers, she stormed out of the house. Clara decided that she would look for this future bride herself. Clara tried to gather any information she could find about Dolores, but nobody seemed to know a thing. Clara did not know what to do, so she decided to visit her mother, Petra. After hearing everything, Petra was stunned. She knew he would remarry someday, but she always thought it would be someone appropriate. This was very unlike him. At Clara's request, Petra tried to talk to Pastor Mark, but Pastor Mark was just as secretive as ever. He told his ex-wife to just stay out of it, but Clara was not the type to just let everything go. Clara called some of her father's friends and even interviewed other members of their church. Nobody knew who Dolores was, but one of Pastor Mark's friends mentioned a former relationship her father had while he was traveling in Sweden. But the woman was older, so she could not be Dolores. Clara had hit a dead end. She did not know what else to do. This marriage did not sit right with her, so she went to the cops. The cops took her concerns seriously and assured her they would launch an investigation. The cops headed to Pastor Mark's home, but he was not there. They went to his church, but nobody had seen him. The cops tried to track down Pastor Mark, but even they could not find him or Dolores. Nobody else could give them information about their whereabouts. The cops assigned to watch Pastor Mark's house caught him coming home. He walked out with a bag and drove off. The cops followed him discreetly and saw they were headed out of town. Pastor Mark drove for about 20 minutes when he arrived at a little house. The house blended in with its surroundings so well that one could walk past it without even noticing it. It was an old wooden house, weathered with age. The path leading to it was overgrown with weeds. It was a good thing the cops were able to follow him. If not, they could easily miss this place. They parked their car a little further so that he wouldn't notice their arrival. They decided to stake out the house until they got a warrant. A few hours later, they got a call. The cops got information on where the wedding would be. The wedding won't be held in Pastor Mark's church. Instead, it will be held in a little church in the next town. They found a wedding registered in the name of Dolores, and it would take place in 2 days. The cops immediately drove to the church. Both were very curious about the wedding since the whole town was gossiping about it. They were also eager to know about the mysterious young bride. They questioned the secretary of the church about the said wedding. The secretary described Pastor Mark perfectly, but when asked to describe the bride, the secretary gave an odd description. She had dark brown hair, wore oversized glasses, and wore expensive clothing. She believed the bride came from a rich family. The cops could not understand the dynamics of the relationship. By the way, the secretary described it, they seemed to be an unlikely couple, but the secretary refused to give any more information without a warrant. The officers continued their investigation. This time, they decided to dig deeper into Pastor Mark's history. They interviewed people in town, reviewed his financial records, and checked his social media accounts. They could not find anything of significance. As they tried to dig into Pastor Mark's history, they realized that what he was doing now was out of his character. Pastor Mark had no criminal record, and he never even got a parking ticket. He was a model citizen who was devoted to the church. Why ruin it all? Then, one of the cops remembered Clara mentioned Pastor Mark had a relationship with a woman from Sweden before. It was a long shot, but they had to give it a try. Maybe this woman knows something about his past than they did. The cops looked for any information they could about Pastor Mark's time in Sweden. They asked Clara who gave her this information, and Clara led them to one of Pastor Mark's oldest friends, Ben. Ben was cooperative when the cops showed up. He was with Pastor Mark in Sweden and looked for a photo album of their time there. One of the pictures showed Pastor Mark with his mystery woman. According to Ben, Pastor Mark met her at a bar. As far as Ben knew, Pastor Mark and that woman never saw each other again after Sweden. But he had never really asked Pastor Mark about it, and he was sure that Pastor Mark never talked about her again. Ben remembered her name was Victoria. The officers thanked Ben and headed back to the station. They had to access their system to learn more about the mysterious woman named Victoria. It did not take long before they got a hit, and the information was something they had not expected. Everything instantly clicked. They immediately got a warrant and left when it was ready. The cops raced to the house, and they made sure they had backup this time in case Pastor Mark tried to run away. This time, they had something on him that could put him in jail. When they got to the house in the woods, they confirmed that Pastor Mark's car was there. They knocked on the door, and when nobody answered, they knocked it down. Once they entered the house, the cops split up and searched every room, but the house was empty. Then, one of the cops found a secret door. They could see a light shining through the gap under it. They immediately opened the door and went down the stairs. They found Pastor Mark and Dolores huddled together in the basement. The girl looked frightened. Meanwhile, Pastor Mark had a defeated look on his face. He knew it was over now. The officers brought them to the police station and seated them in separate interrogation rooms. The officers in charge wanted to start with Dolores, but before they could get started, an attorney arrived. She was provided a lawyer because her 18th birthday was one day away, so she was still underage. The cops can't talk to her without a lawyer present. The officers decided to start with Pastor Mark instead. They already figured out what was happening based on what they found out about Victoria, but they still needed a confession. They planned to use Pastor Mark's confession to get Dolores to confess. Pastor Mark probably realized there was no way out now that they had Dolores too, so he started talking. He told the cops everything and expressed clear remorse about it. Everything he said confirmed what the cops already knew. You see, they found out Victoria had a daughter named Dolores. They did the math, and the date of conception was around the time Ben and Pastor Mark were in Sweden. But why would Pastor Mark marry his daughter? After hearing Mark's confession, Dolores broke down. She explained that she had tried several times to get a green card, but she was denied. She desperately wanted to live with her father, Pastor Mark, since her relationship with her mother, Victoria, had deteriorated. So Dolores came up with a plan. She asked Pastor Mark if he could marry her, and then they would get a divorce later on when she gets her citizenship. This way, she will be able to stay in America even after the divorce. This confession meant dire consequences. Pastor Mark was arrested for his involvement in this plan. He was charged with immigration fraud and was permanently banned from any involvement in the ministry. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term.